And Steve, the cricket guy. Good to see you. You all right?
Evening, mate. Yeah, lovely to see you, mate. Good to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you too. And Tony, good to see you. The legend, he's here. You all right?
Yeah, good evening, guys. Another great sunny day. Pity our
Yes,
cricket
it's been a
wasn't quite up
sunny day.
to that standard, but never mind.
That's right. It's been a sunny day. It's been a beautiful day, and here we are talking about a lot of things. Cricket is in full flow. The summer is here. It's 24 degrees here, or around 20s anyway. We've got incredible stuff happening, but we're going to go into a lot of stuff. First thing we're obviously going to talk about is the Ollie Robinson situation, how that's kind of mushroomed a bit, and there's been some things happen, but also as well the situation with England against New Zealand, and also the historical tweets from some players who are superstars for England. So it's going to be crazy, but the boys can handle it, and I'm sure they're going to get into it in a fantastic way. So over to you, Steve.
Cheers, Mac. Thank you very much. Yeah, loads going on this week, both on and off the field. So, Tony, we spoke last week about Ollie Robinson, and as we were doing the show last week, I think it was probably the second day where people had heard about his historic tweets, and not surprisingly, Robinson, it was announced he would be suspended from international cricket whilst he was investigated. I don't know what your thoughts on that were. Mine were that it was inevitable that was going to happen.
I think it was absolutely inevitable for 2 or 3 reasons. One, I think the ECB and cricket generally needed to show that they weren't taking the matter lightly.
Yeah.
2, I felt that it was only right that because of the nature of the tweets, which were frankly disgusting, let's not duck it, he had to be sanctioned, albeit it was 9 years ago. He had to be sanctioned. There was a certain amount, I think, of breast beating because they maybe should have picked it up. Certainly 2 or 3 years ago, he should have been looked at when he was playing county cricket, and was obviously somebody slightly different to normal. And thirdly, I think that the ECB needed to show that they wanted to clean up cricket. And I don't think we've heard the last of this. What we will wait in anticipation for is the results of their investigation, mitigate if there are any mitigating circumstances, and if, as there are things being hyped around on social media, that there might be others of greater experience who have obviously not, I don't think, done anything to the same extent that Robinson did, but has certainly, shall we say, infringed the propriety levels that people should adhere to when they're doing these tweets, etc.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's interesting, of course, today it was reported as well that Robinson has stepped away from Sussex as well. I guess it's probably been, whatever, when you think about the tweets, no doubt it's been a very trying personal time for Robinson, and not surprisingly, I think he's stepped away for a little bit. He's not going to play for Sussex in the next few Vitality Blast games.
And I'm sure he's been advised to keep his head down for and until the investigation is complete. There's no point in the spotlight would be on him wherever he was on the cricket field. And I think that he's probably taken the right decision to try and take the heat out of the situation until it will rise again when the results of the investigation are publicized.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see, as you say, what there will inevitably be some further sanction, I think, and it will be interesting to see what that is, and how that goes. So interesting. We've got lots of folk watching already this evening. So if you've got any thoughts on that, please let us know in the chat. Be really interested in your thoughts, whether you're for England, whether you're overseas. We'd be really keen to hear what what you think about the Ollie Robinson situation. So also, Tony, as Mac suggested in the intro there's also been some other tweets that have come to light this week, and some exchanges between some fairly senior England players, I think, between Butler and Morgan and Jimmy Anderson, which certainly read like they are making fun of speech patterns from people from India or the Indian subcontinent that don't look too good and too clever as well, which were not nearly as long ago. I don't think they're contemporary. I don't think they're from this week, but they're not nearly as long ago, I don't think, as Robinson's tweets.
Well, I understand that the ones allegedly from Butler and Morgan certainly are on the last tour of India.
Really?
But I think I'm treading a little more carefully on this one. This social media, of course, is digging very deeply to see what they can find, and I don't know the nature of the tweets apart from the use of the word "sir" in them, which is, I understand, an Indian term for of address to certain people of a certain level. Now, whether the Indians themselves or the Indian cricketers themselves are offended by this, I don't know. I suspect they may be, but I think they're well, if I know, and I know a good few Indians, they are what I would call gentlemen and ladies, and they would take it on the chin, sort of thing. That's not the right expression. They would accept it nobly, but that still doesn't make the tweets right. And they were what I would call. I don't class them in the same level as Robinson's, which were outwardly outrageously sexist and racist. There was a hint of humor in them. I think that was the intention, and I don't know enough, to be honest, but there is a hint of humor there, and which looks to me as if it was a bit stupid.
Yeah,
rather
very ill-judged.
Vicious, yes. But again, I will wait to see, and I'm sure the ECB will conduct their own investigation into that. It'd be very interesting to see what happens if they decide to suspend. I suspect they will not, but that's only my personal opinion.
Yeah. You made an interesting observation to me earlier on, Tony, about the fact that this wasn't really referred to by the commentators and the media covering the match today.
Yes, I said that before we started to you offline. I listened quite carefully throughout the day to Test Match Special, to Sky Sports, and to Talk Sport, and nowhere did I hear these referred to. I heard it in a news bulletin in almost as a passing comment. But I think that people are waiting to see how this one pans out, and I personally think I'll do the same. I don't want to rush to judgment on this one. There may be more in the background that we don't know about, whereas the Robinson situation stood on its own 2 feet, if you like. Being outrageous, and I'm glad to see. I noticed the politicians tried to step in and say he shouldn't have been suspended. I don't agree with that. I think he certainly should be suspended, and has been, pending the results of the investigation. And then when the results of the investigation are concluded, then if there's any further punishment deemed, taking into account if there are any mitigating circumstances, which we, of course, it's wrong of us to be probing into those things when we don't know the facts. But superficially, he's guilty to me, and he should have some punishment. And it looks as if he's going to have some punishment. Well, he's already lost a test match, and I'm sure he's going to lose some against India as well.
Yeah, I think so. The other couple of interesting things to do with social media as well. I think there was a suggestion I saw on the BBC this week that there was a further tweet by a player when they were 16 years old, which again, they gave no real details of it, other than seemed to suggest it was offensive. I don't know where that stands. And I also saw some people retweeting yesterday some tweets from Jofra Archer, which we're using terminology that many people would probably consider to be homophobic. So it will be again interesting to see if any of those things are taken forward. I guess now, because this has become high profile, there'll be a lot of scrutiny of probably all players, historic and other social media postings and things. And it's not a question, I think, of people scrubbing their accounts and getting rid of them. That's not really the point. The point is that that I think as Joe Root has acknowledged, that England cricket probably needs to look at itself and do better. And you know, there's an element of team sports where you have dressing room culture and you have these things, and they can be they can be tough places to survive in sometimes for people. But there's got to be a reckoning here of what is and what isn't acceptable, and what sorts of language can and can't be used, I think.
I mean, there's an awful lot of other than cricket racism flying around, not just in this country, as we all know, in America and other countries. But and emotions are running very high, and of course, what appeared reasonable then, because of ignorance, if you like, and lack of what shall I say, understanding of the situation, and an amount of arrogance in that the people who made those comments or issued those tweets were stupid and not sensitive enough to the feelings of others in certain circumstances. In other circumstances, they are inexcusable when they are outrageous tweets and trolls and the like. But emotions are running high, and it's difficult to keep a balance at the moment. On the one hand, we do certainly want to root out any racism and matters of that ilk. But on the other hand, we don't want to be looking for tweets that were issued by 10, 11 or 12-year-olds, if that's the case, who possibly acting under peer pressure and following what shall we say, models that they idolized and saw them doing, and so they imitated them. It's very, very difficult. I would rather let the dust settle and let the investigations proceed, not to be prolonged, because that is a danger, that there will be people trying to delay and delay and delay and sweep it under the carpet. That mustn't be allowed to happen. It must go through due process and not take an indeterminate time, which is not fair to any of the three sides involved. That's those in receipt who are affected by the tweets, those making the tweets, and those investigating them.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Tony. I think it would be, and I think I'm getting the sense from Joe Root that he would welcome things to happen quickly, and for matters to be addressed, and for decisions to be made swiftly. I got that sense from his pre-match interviews and so on. And I think
one only has to look at sledging in cricket, for instance. And we're going down to Australia in the autumn, and I think that if you had recordings of some of the sledges that has gone on both sides, not just from the Australians but on their opponents as well, they would not be acceptable now, and they would be deemed to be incredibly racist and intimidatory, etc. So I think that all these things have to be taken in the circumstances in which they occur. Yeah.
Okay, Tony. Well, we've had a good chat about that. I suppose kind of bridging from that discussion onto the test match, and certainly we can talk about how the first test ended. But I guess one possible impact of these topics being so prominent in the last couple of weeks is the fact that obviously Overton, who is in England's squad, was himself involved in an incident where he was accused of using racial language towards a batsman in a game, and he denies he said it, or he doesn't believe he said it. Over umpires and non-striking batsmen believe that they heard him say things. So I was not surprised at all that Overton wasn't selected for the second test. I have to say, I think that would have. Whether or not he might have been otherwise, I don't know. But I think given the prevailing media narrative and the fact that this is so high profile, I think that would have been a very difficult place for an England team to be if Everton had got a game today, which, you know, people will take their own views as to whether that was fair or unfair on him. What I would say, I guess, is to close this off, is I was very interested to hear Mark Ramprakash's comments this week, where there was beginning to be lots of sympathy expressed towards Robinson not getting a cap, and arguably perhaps you could say Everton not getting a cap, and so on. And Mike Ramprakash made the point, well, let's have some sympathy for the people that were also affected by the things that were said and were tweeted. And I think that's a good point, and something that we wouldn't want to forget. But let's move on and talk about the cricket itself. We'll obviously welcome any comments from anyone who's watching, and there's plenty of folk watching this evening who you might want to give us your views. As I say, if you're in England or in the UK, or if you're overseas, we'd really love to hear what you think on this topic, and you know, get other perspectives. But let's round up the first test. We spoke last week after day 2 of the test, and as the test went on, New Zealand gave what is quite unusual these days, a very sporting declaration, setting England less than 4 and over to win the match at Lord's. And England, as they so often do, they came out all guns blazing, and I think at one point we're nearly going at 2 and over. What did you make of England's absolute?
I was about to go down your throat until that last result about 2 and over.
Yeah. What did you make of that, Tony? Were you disappointed with England?
One, I don't think it was a sporting declaration at all. When he made it, Williams knew outright in his own mind that there was not a cat in hell's chance of England going for the run chase. I looked up just to be interesting. In the first innings, England scored 275 runs in 101 overs. And he set, 273 in 70. Mm. So 2 and 2 make about 150 in that circumstance. There, I've written down here a capital NO chance of England going for it, and it actually might possibly even have benefited Williamson to bat on a lot more and just use it as batting practice and tired the English bowlers out for the second test. But that's a different way of looking at it, because I think England came out and Burns batted himself into form, and has carried that form on in today, and it also gave Southey the chance to bowl well, and he's been rested, and I think, and this is maybe a bit controversial, I think, and unfair to the New Zealanders, I think the New Zealanders have transparently used these 2 tests as preparation for the final against India. Bolt stayed at home and arrived halfway through the first test, had a little bit of net practice, and then was picked to play today and has bowled. Southey put in his best efforts to see what form he was in, found he was in great form, so they immediately said, right, we'll rest you for the next match. The same happened with Jemison, who played very well, so they rested him. The spinner, he unfortunately split a finger, so I don't think it's quite the same thing. But it was interesting to see that with England's selection again, their spinner Patel took 2 wickets today. Mind you, the ball didn't turn an inch. Not one, I mean, the one, we'll talk about some of the England batsmen, and I'll talk about Pope particularly, who got out to Patel. But the ball didn't turn at all. I looked up some stats about Edgbaston, and this year, admittedly, it was slightly different conditions, but when Essex played Warwickshire, even the mighty Simon Harmer, long since I have, as you know, didn't manage to bowl Warwickshire out and took, I think it was 1 for plenty. So Edgbaston is not likely to turn. It might, if the wicket gets dusty on day 3.5, 4.5, and 5, it might take some spin, and then our demon spinner Joe Root might come into his own. But I can see where they've gone. They've picked the same team, and if experience of New Zealand, who had a better blocker upper possibly of an end in Patel, who despite having an appalling test wicket taking average, and he hasn't played very often, is however very economical. He doesn't give away much more than 3 per over, which for a spinner it means that he can bowl. And he certainly today blocked up an end in the few times he bowled. He immediately tightened up the over. So no, I have to say that there was not a cat in hell's chance of Joe Root going for it, and it enabled Burns to bat himself into form.
Yeah, no, I when I saw the declaration, I thought, well, if this was a team with Buttler and Stokes in it,
different.
We might have gone into one-day mode. Opened with Buttler and Stokes or something like that, and had a go. And then if it wasn't to be, then by the time, Pope was in, maybe
we could have held back Joe Root and the like, and they could have come in and played great bat.
So, but yeah, I wasn't surprised when we didn't go for it. But the team today, I mean, that was it. When I saw the team today and seeing no spinner again, the top 7 all retained, and then bringing in Ollie Stone for Robinson, essentially that was the change. And I'm glad to see Ollie Stone get a game. It'll be interesting to see him bowl. I think he's quite exciting and he's very quick. But I wasn't really sure, Tony, why in the run up to this test then, if England weren't going to play a spinner at all, not only did they have Leach in the squad, but they'd also called up Dominic Bass as well.
Yes, they did. And I think this is, I would call this team building. The same, they called up Hamid. They're sort of tapping Hamid on the shoulder and saying, look, you're back in the race now, and let's see how you go in the bubble. And they were saying to Bess, we both said that Dom Bess was treated not disgracefully, that's the wrong term, but he harshly was made the scapegoat for the bowling performances in India. And I think this was a way of saying to Bess, to be quite frank, Dom, we've looked around and we can't see a better off spinner in the country than you. Maybe Moeen, but is he or isn't he? And there's the young fella playing for Surrey, who's Varidi, who is very young. So we're going to welcome you in the bubble. The wickets may be different by the time the midsummer or the full summer comes and we're playing India, and we would like you in the bubble. And the same with Leach. I think these 2 tests against New Zealand, I think they picked their choice of locations very carefully. Lords and Edgbaston. Edgbaston, hasn't had a test for a good number of years.
Right.
Actually, its record of having tests is very poor, despite the fact it's a very good, because it's a reasonably good wicket and doesn't help the spinners too much. So I feel that this is concentration on the Ashes, and they're looking at the batsmen and the fast bowlers.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I just think I think they'll rue it. I mean, particularly as they won the toss, which means New Zealand should be batting fourth. I think not to have a spinner when you've got a team and batting fourth is usually something for a spinner on the last day or going into the tail end of the game. So we'll see. As ever, because it's day one, it's obviously difficult to know exactly how the game's poised until both teams have had a bat. But England finished in the day on 258 for 7. Burns was good again, I thought. He's clearly played himself into form, as you say, and he looks like he's well balanced at the crease and playing nicely. I thought his 100 at Lords was very good. Burns is looking good.
I thought his innings today actually was better than the innings than his 100 at Lords. I thought he was more fluent and he played more offside strokes. He was more positive, and I do think he played himself. He's now the 3rd best leading run scorer in the country, behind the Australian playing for Durham and another of my favourite rejections, Jake Libby of Worcestershire. They're the only 2 people who have scored more runs in county cricket and Test cricket combined this year. So Burns is in good form.
Yeah.
Lawrence, I heard eulogised. I thought I'm an Essex man, and I've always been an Essex man, and I'm very fond and very proud of Lawrence. But there is no doubt he is one of the world's worst starters. He is really. Once he gets past maybe 10 overs, 7 overs, something like that, and if he's still in, he blossoms. And that's what happened today, because really and truly, I thought Bolt was all over him like a rash, and how he was still in after about 4 or 5 overs, I did not know. And that would be my worry about Lawrence. If you get him early, he'll be out for a very small score. But if you give him and he gets going, a bit like another batsman who's very similar to him and always batted well at 6 for England, who was Bell. Bell was the same, and they tried Bell up the order and it didn't work. And his fallibility early on in his innings was exposed, and Lawrence has the same. And there's another thing about Lawrence, and simply suffers from the same. And in fact, there's an increasing, what shall we say, proclivity for batsmen to take middle and off, or even off stump when they take guard, so that they are. And the rumor for this, or the reason for this, is allegedly they need to know where their off stump is. In my day, I took middle and leg, and if there was a bowler who was giving me trouble outside the off stump, I took middle stump. And if you don't know when you take middle stump where your off stump is, then to my mind you shouldn't be a top class cricketer. I really do. Now, so what happens when these people, and Sibley is one, Lawrence is another, they take offside. When they play the ball, they are, because it's impossible not to, they're playing across the line. Every time they're playing a straight shot or an onside shot, they are playing across the line. And so the increased probability of LBWs, outside edges, is ever increasing.
Yeah, there was an interesting discussion on Sky Sports with, I think, Atherton and some others were having a conversation about this taking off stump guard and why you would do it, and it just brings LBW into play so frequently because the umpire knows you're standing in front of your stumps. It's a very strange thing to do, and also it tends to let batsmen play a little more outside off stump when perhaps they could leave it alone as well. I don't know. That's my sense of it. But you mentioned Sibley there in the and Lawrence. So I mean, Lawrence obviously had a good day, but your point about how he starts is interesting, and it may mean that the first half an hour tomorrow morning is a little bit hairy for him. If he can survive that, then he may go on and score 100. But he's going to have to start again in the morning.
Yeah, it's not quite the same tomorrow morning because he's got his eye in and he's got runs under his belt. He hasn't got the nervous naught, if you like, to put it that way, of a 0 to 10 or 0 to 20. So he's got runs. It was a bit like Burns. So Burns gets out an awful lot, and he did again today, gets out an awful number of times between 50 and 80 in his innings. He seems to have when he approaches the 80s or 70s, he gets nervous about whether he go on. Now, at Lord's, he finished not out overnight, so he was essentially starting again the following morning, and so he comfortably went to his 100. Of the other batsmen today, Crawley, well, I heard them all making excuses for Crawley, but I'm afraid anybody who comes in and plays one day shots in a test match when he hasn't even sighted the ball, let alone played himself in, I think, I wonder, I have a great respect for Thorpe, who is the batting coach. When he played for Surrey, he was a lovely, dashing cricketer, perhaps not as good, but in the Gower mode. And he played his shots all the time, Thorpe. And I just wonder, is he the right person, if you like, to take Crawley on one side and indeed I'll go further and say Pope as well on one side, and say, look, you're doing very well in county cricket, but in Test cricket there's a different resilience. Pope today, I thought, my goodness, you've learned your lesson, because in the first for his first 20 runs, he played very circumspectly, very correctly, settled himself in, and I thought, oh, you're building for a big innings here. On comes Patel, a straight up and down, not turning the ball a yard. He tries to cut the ball off the off stump to try and get runs quickly, when there was no need at all. All he needed to do was keep playing in the vein he was playing, especially as a couple of wickets had gone down very quickly, 3 wickets, in fact, if you count Sibley getting out. Sibley, Crawley, and Joe Root. But Pope didn't, and he's an extremely talented and very promising player, and scores a bucket full of runs in county championships. But I think he's still got a lot to learn to fulfill that promise in Test cricket.
Yeah, we've spoken on the show before about how England have invested a lot of faith in Pope, and I think, as you said many times, Tony, this England team is to some extent quite a hard one to get out. It's harder to get out of than get into, to some extent, and I think Pope might benefit from that. And as you say, he's certainly getting plenty of experience. The dismissal today, were kind of when his eyes light up with the non-turning spinner coming on, reminded me a little bit of a run that Kevin Peterson had for a while, where he seemed to get out to fairly average left-arm spinners quite a lot.
Yes,
and I think it was because he just saw them as a buffet, and slightly underestimated them at Test level.
Run fodder, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, see him getting out, just playing whatever shot he fancied, and then chipping bowlers like Suleiman Ben to square leg, when he could have put that delivery anywhere he liked, and he ended up putting it straight to the hands of square leg. Yeah. I think we were there a day when he did that in Durham once, and it was a little bit of reminiscent of that Pope just thought, oh, good, I can have a dash here now, I can have a bit of a go, and he just misjudged it, and I think that was a shame. But Sibley as well. What were your thoughts on Sibley today, Tony, and more generally his innings? Also, bearing in mind he did score some runs in the fourth innings at Lords as well.
Yes, Sibley is an enigma. As I said, he does play across the line because of his predominance of to play leg side, and he's another one of these who takes middle and off, or even off stump. So he's bound to be playing across the ball. So I still have a feeling that the selectors feel that in Australia, against the pace attack of the Australians, that Sibley could do well, and I think they're going to give him every possible chance to run into form and go on that tour. His performance today was just Sibley, wasn't it? He's dour. He's patient. He waits and scores his little nudges and nurdles, and he's got some nice flicks through the leg side, through mid wicket and mid on. The jury is still out for me. I don't know. He didn't make it with Surrey, and was it Surrey he was, and he left Surrey.
I mean, I think that was more. He had a new contract offer, and I think his agent found him a better offer at Warwickshire. I think Surrey were pretty annoyed that they lost him. I think
he's got the right temperament. Of that, I'm sure. But whether he's technically would be found out, I'm yet to. I don't know. Is the truthful answer. I don't know.
No, I agree. I kind of I get a little frustrated with him sometimes, and certainly some of his dismissals can be.
At the same time, he hasn't had many innings this year.
No, because of his injuries.
And possibly his timing is just a little bit out still. I would keep. Let's put it this way. I would give him every chance to show that he's worthy of his place and of the tour to Australia.
Yeah. Well, one positive from today, thinking about Burns and Sibley, is I looked at England's World Test Championship performances, and certainly the top three batsmen, and they were getting out too quickly. And the top three were out, and Root was coming in within the first 20 overs most of the time. Well, today the openers put on 72 and 181 balls, so they batted for 30 overs, before a wicket fell, which is frankly much better. Although 72 and 181 balls is hardly the stuff which is going to empty the bars. It was what you want on the first session of a test match. It was just a shame that when they came back after lunch, they simply fell fairly quickly, and then it led to a couple falling straight away altogether, which was a bit of a shame. But certainly batting a session is much better from the openers, and although yes they were a little slow, they certainly that was a much better platform. It wasn't really their fault that England weren't in a stronger position at the end of the day. So we've spoken about most of the batsmen. I think we have to mention poor old Bracey getting a first baller, and that's him now. Yet to score a run in Test cricket, which is a real shame for him. I hope he gets a bat again in this test and can make some.
Well,
at least make some runs.
He'll get another bat, don't even the English weather won't stop that. I don't think, not this time. I feel terribly sorry for him on the one hand, but on the other hand, it demonstrates the gulf between a certain type of county cricketer and the Test match cricketer. What really did surprise me he got out playing a loose off drive, waved his bat like a wand outside the ball that they shouldn't have played at all, and he opens or goes in at number 3 for his county. So you should surely know that when you start your innings, you don't go wafting outside the off stump at ball 1, let alone ball 101. You don't do that. And I just think that maybe we have to wait and see, because there's one other famous batsman who got 2 ducks in his first 2 Test innings.
Another boy from Essex.
That was the immortal Graham Gooch, who went on. Mind you, it took Gooch some time to come back and get back in the Test team after that. I don't think perhaps that luxury is going to be afforded to Bracey, because Buttler is there. Folkes will recover from his injury. And there are 1 or 2 other good wicket keepers knocking around who will. And he didn't. I'll be interested to see how he keeps in this match. He kept adequately in the first match, but I don't think he set the world on fire. Having said that, I thought the New Zealand keeper today was definitely fallible. Of course, he was the reserve wicketkeeper, although they're talking about him opening the batting or being the wicketkeeper when Watling gives up after this next Test, I think, after the final.
Well, certainly when Watling's retiring from Test cricket after the World Test Championship final, and it's the next breath. The commentators always say, and Latham will take the Blundell will take the gloves, it's be interesting to see just how good he is. Again, maybe he was a bit nervous today as well, but he certainly has been their go-to reserve keeper.
I was reminded today, Jeff Boycott, who seems to finally have faded from the guru scene, he invented 2 phrases, both of which I think will last into perpetuity. And the first one was the corridor of uncertainty. It was with that space outside the off stump on a good length that bowlers try to find, and batsmen have an inordinate difficulty in playing because they don't know whether the ball's going to swing away or in or carry on. That was a wonderful fact. But he also coined the phrase, if you think you're doing well, assume that you've lost 2 more wickets than you have. So if you're 76 for none, say to yourself, how well will we be situated if we were 76 for 2? And I think those words came true today, because we thought coming out after lunch, I was 5 minutes late sitting down to watch it after lunch, and by that time we'd lost a couple of wickets. I think it is a truism that if you think you're on top, just assume what the score would be as if you'd lost 2 more wickets.
No, that's definitely from a captain's perspective, that stops you getting too excited too quickly. So we've talked about the England team, and they start again tomorrow with Lawrence and with Wood batting, and Wood and Stone, the material men. They certainly did okay with the bat today, and allowed Lawrence to score, as you say, once he got in, to score some runs. It will be interesting to see I mean, New Zealand will be coming into tomorrow thinking, well, we should be able to nip these last few out, because the England tail isn't quite the Tufnell Giddens type of very long tail that England. So Andy Caddick batting at number 8, I think. It's not that bad, but it's still not the best batting tail with Broad and Anderson to come.
Well,
so
I'm not afraid to make a fool of myself, because I've made a fool of myself many times and will do so again. I don't think we'll get more than 20 more runs.
Right.
When they took the new ball today, Trent Boult was exhausted. He was jet lagged. 2, hadn't played cricket for about 2 months with the red ball. He hadn't played it for about 4 months. And also Wagner, who had a tough time in the first test, was also asked to share a heavy load in the second. And Henry, whilst he has great experience of, I found him very interesting. He's great experience of English cricket. He's taken 112 wickets at 19.7 in England, playing for Kent, and I think Derbyshire was his other county.
Yeah.
But his test average, I think, his bowling average is 50. But I thought he bowled pretty well too. And I think in the morning, having had a night's rest, and the new ball is what? How many? 4 overs old or 5 overs old?
Yeah.
I think that I give us 20 or 25 runs.
Right. So you think we'll struggle to make 280 then? That's fair enough.
Yeah.
So
just keep a podcast of this, Steve.
Yeah, we will. Nobody will ever know, Tony. Don't worry. But on balance, if you're in the New Zealand dressing room, would you say you'd had a good day or a disappointing day?
I think they had a good day, but I think they would be disappointed that they didn't take wickets with the second new ball. I think they thought that they had every opportunity to get England out and then opening the batting them tomorrow morning themselves. That hasn't happened. So I think, albeit they're still in the driving seat, in my opinion, because we haven't got many runs, really.
No.
Not in test match scenarios. And
not when you win the toss and bat first, no.
Yeah, that's right. And also the wicket looks good. And it doesn't seem to be a fast wicket. Maybe Jimmy will be able to swing some on it. That's, by the way, we mustn't let anything go by without congratulating Jimmy on breaking Alistair Cook's record of the most test appearances. What has he now got? He's now played in how many tests?
162.
162. Yeah, Alistair Cook, 161. Mind you, Broad's not that far behind with 148.
No, that's right.
I would like the finest bowler before Jimmy had his second coming almost. I used to think that Glenn McGrath was one fantastic bowler, and the two of them I think are very, very comparable. And I looked out of curiosity today before we came on. I thought, I wonder what the comparisons between the two of them are. Jimmy Anderson. He's now 39. McGrath retired when he was 37. Jimmy has played in 162 tests. McGrath 124. Jimmy's taken 616 wickets. McGrath took 563. Jimmy's was at 26.58. McGrath 21.63. Jimmy's strike rate was 56, just over. And McGrath's strike rate was 52. And Jimmy took, for instance, 30 fifers, and McGrath took 29 fifers. And Jimmy took 27 fourfers, and McGrath took 28 fourfers. I mean, the parallels and the type of bowler that they were. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the two of them are able to go on as long as they have done. Jimmy has had a resurgence, and I think he's still able, unless something dramatic injury-wise happens to him, as could happen. I think that Jimmy has a few more tests. It's certainly another Ashes tour in him.
Yeah, you think he'll go on the Ashes tour then?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think the two of those were the two, in my experience, they're the two best bowlers that I've seen. And interestingly, I heard Jeremy Coney saying today, and they were talking about Wagner, and Jonathan Agnew was also talking about people who bowled short. And it's very, very physically demanding to constantly bowl short balls and bumpers and bouncers. And neither Jimmy nor Glenn McGrath indulged in such things. And Jimmy, when he was interviewed, said it is his nature of his bowling, and although he's a fast bowler, he's not a tiring bowler. He doesn't tire himself out by bowling short balls, because they both got their wickets, he and McGrath, by pitching the ball up and letting the swing do the work.
Yeah. No. You're quite right to mention Jimmy getting into his 162nd test. It's phenomenal, and for a fast bowler to play that many test matches is something else. And for England to have two fast bowlers that between them have played over 300 tests is incredible.
Yeah.
Between two players, that's really incredible. So, but you're right. It may well be in a little while we're talking about Stuart Broad pulling away ahead. I think Broad may well certainly beat Cook's tally, whether or not, depends how long Jimmy goes on for, I guess. Maybe Jimmy will just keep going until Broad retires, just to make sure he ends up with the most caps. You can just see him doggedly keep going when he's 50.
I think the Ashes will be his last hurrah.
Maybe,
I think he's saving himself for that, and he hopes to go out on a high in that tour. But unless our batsmen improve, he's not going to have that wish granted, I don't think.
No. So for me, with this test, how it'll play out, as you never really know until both teams have had a bat. New Zealand could pile the runs on, or they might have a brain melt and be out very cheaply. You never know. I think I'm looking forward to seeing Stone and Wood bowl in harness, two genuine pace bowlers. It'll be interesting to see if they get a little bit more out of the pitch and out of the conditions than the New Zealand bowlers did, who are, none of them are probably as fast as Wood and Stone. So that will be interesting to see.
Well, it's interesting. Stone there, his average speed is around 93. Whereas Wood is 5 miles an hour faster than Stone. I thought Stone was as fast, but I think since he did his anterior cruciate, he lost just a little bit of his dynamic speed, and he's come back, and I think he's right. But he is certainly way faster than Jimmy and probably Broad. Even Broad, although Broad can throw in the odd real whiz one if he gets hit for 6 over mid wicket. Next ball's going to zoom in. But it's interesting. They've gone for 2 pace bowlers, and of course your comments about Overton earlier, I really couldn't see Overton not being picked, and I didn't know, to be honest, until you said it tonight, that he is alleged to have made some indiscreet comments. I was sure that Overton would play. But so now we've got 2 fast bowlers. I don't know that Stone swings it, but certainly, I mean, with limited test experience, and we've got 2 old timers. So it's going to be a difficult job for Joe Root to manage those, or to get what? Well, there's no way he's going to bowl 90 overs in a day with those 4.
No, he'd lucky to get 75.
Yeah, he's all about 84 or 85, I would say.
Yeah. Good stuff. And so let's see how it plays out. Difficult at this stage of the game to see how it's gonna go. That's kind of, that's probably all we need to say about the test that's going on in Edgbaston at the moment. There is another test going on at the moment as we speak. The West Indies and South Africa are playing in the West Indies. West Indies not had a great day today, I have to say. I don't know if you've seen this, Tony, but they were bowled out for 97 in the first innings. And Ngidi took 5 for 19, and Anrich Norke, I think I've probably mangled that terribly, but you know what I mean. He took 4 for 35.
And I thought would star in the IPO, and he never got playing.
Yeah. So that's good. And at the moment, as we speak, South Africans are 63 for 2. So obviously responding pretty pretty handily to 97 all out. And you'd expect them to have a pretty healthy lead going into the turn in that game. So it's great. There's more Test cricket going on. The Vitality Blast has restarted as well. The domestic county T20 games has just been the first set of games of those. So that's good to see. We'll probably touch back on those in a week or two's time and see who's making a name for themselves this season and maybe either warming themselves up for the 100 or pushing for a 100 contract, because I think that all the 100 teams can still recruit one other player from the Vitality Blast. And for people
I saw today about 5 Indians have signed up for the 100.
Right. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, let's see how they go.
Yeah.
Interesting. The Blast is going on, as you know, at the moment. Surrey, Jax is scoring a stack of runs for Surrey against a certain county called Middlesex.
I refuse to believe it, Tony. I refuse. I simply refuse.
Middlesex are probably in the 2nd division now. I don't know. But I noticed that yesterday, I think it was, Livingston scored 90 off 56 balls and then took 1 for 22. Butler scored 30 and Parkinson took 3 for 28, which I thought was good. What I can't remember, I don't know whether you can remember it, a tie between Worcester and Notts.
Yeah.
And Notts, who had it within their grasp and then managed to run 3 people out in their inning. And my man Jake Libby scored 52 not out for Worcestershire, following on his 126 against Durham. I don't know how he's not going to feature in the bubble shortly. Surely to goodness they can't overlook him. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. But no, certainly good to see the Vitality Blast starting. Mac, calling you back in, mate. That's your favourite form of the game, the old T20.
Yes, it is. It is indeed. And look, it's great to have short form cricket for a guy like me, and I love it. So look, it's been great to listening to you boys talk about all the things. Obviously, the Ollie Robinson situation and his former teammates now for England, and all the other stuff that's happening in the cricket news. So thank you for all that, boys. And yeah, look, for anyone who's listening to it live, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Anyone who's watching this after it's live, thank you for watching. Leave some comments. That'd be great. Anyone listening on podcast, thank you for listening as well. So thank you so much. Thanks, boys, for all your thoughts on all the things that happen in the cricket world. Any final thoughts on anything?
Well, just to say, I think that the Test match in Edgbaston is nicely poised. It could, England, if England outdo Tony's prediction and score a few more runs and get over 300, closer to 350, which would be a bit of a stretch from here, that might put a bit of pressure on, not quite the New Zealand B team, as I called them before we started recording, but there's a team with 7 changes. There'll be a few people there, Phillips, Young, who will be under a bit of pressure to try to do something in order to get into the World Test Championship final side.
I personally think that both sides are to a certain extent experimenting in this test. And we won't really know how it's going to form out until we see how New Zealand bat and, more importantly, how we bowl and whether the 2 veterans are able to keep themselves going for a second test match in quick succession, which might be a bit difficult. It'd be very interesting to see. I think it is delicately poised. At the moment, we have enough to runs not to be out of it. And if we bowl well in their first innings, then it's going to be a close match. However, if Conway, Young, Nichols, and Latham score their runs, then we might be in a small bit of bother. But we'll wait and see.
The ebb and flow of Test cricket, Mac, you can't beat it.
That's right. Thank you, boys. That's very good. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about the England-New Zealand match. As the boys are so finely poised, but let us know your thoughts as well. Obviously, Tony's given his thorough thoughts on that as well. So thank you so much. And as always, if you want to follow what's happening, follow us on Twitter, SFTV_cricket. Steve updates that as and when things are happening and some important and poignant points that are happening. And Steve's written some stuff on Medium. I'll put that in the show notes as well. So yeah, look, it's great to have you on the show. It's great that everyone's doing a Cricket Fan Show. We're here every Thursday, 8 p.m. talking about, or just after 8 p.m., just talking about what's going on. We know that there's a lot of controversy at the moment, and we'll obviously talk about it as and when it happens. Obviously about Ollie Robinson, we've talked about it a couple of weeks now, and also this historical stuff that's happening as well. But let's see what happens in the games to come. Good luck to England, good luck to New Zealand, and we'll see what happens also across the globe as well. So thanks a lot. Thanks, Steve, as always. Pleasure.
Cheers, Mac.
Thank you. And thank you, Tony. Thank you for all of your input as well.
No problem.
Cheers. Pleasure.